Life and drinks. The cherry from her Manhattan exploded with 1,000 pricks of rye, a steely, hypnotic sensation of private consciousness. From the beginning, from the first gin and tonic in June, the dull burst of quinine and juniper berries, this was the promise of the cocktail. When I was fitted for my first diaphragm in high school, she took me to lunch, ordered Liebfraumilch, which we drank as wine was drunk then, the bottle warm on the table between us, the liberating liquid loosening their old structures as I had so recently undressed and opened the private part of myself to the world in the form of a boy. On the frigid day I turned 18, my cousin David and I put on down coats and hats. We sat, absurdly insulated from each other, holding daiquiris in our mittens among the broken granite cliffs which sparkled with flecks of mica, and watched the brittle water in the bay break up ice chips in its foam. David was already dirty and doomed, an old pirate flag snapping stiffly in the breeze. He embodied something rebellious, unwholesome, perfectly summed up by the taste of white rum. For 2 years, instead of eating, Kay and I fortified ourselves with black and tans at the Iron Horse, Guinness foamed over ale. We argued about what Nietzsche meant about Superman and whether men were actually necessary, conversations fueled as much by Matisse and Almaden as Marcuse and Adrienne Rich. These ideas still taste to me warm and pissy like the Rhine wine Uncle Harry used to bring to Thanksgiving dinner, a vinegary counterpart like my uncle to the acorn squash. One fall devolved into a degenerate era of Gibson cocktails with a music teacher at his off-campus house, where he taught me everything I know about Rachmaninoff and gave me, in parting, the soundtrack to Last Tango in Paris and a tumbler of Benedictine and brandy. New York. Mai Tais and Bongo Bongo at Trader Vic's under the Plaza Hotel, viscous oysters and dry sherry at the top of the World Trade Center, whose then vertiginous height hollowed out the ankles. The Reagan-era disco years, where everyone said that Studio 54 was over and $550 a month for a walk-up was a form of robbery. I worked at Penthouse magazine, where sometimes Saturday afternoons lasted all night, Stolichnaya thickening in the freezer and white lines of cocaine glistening on a pocket mirror. I never had cash, only passes, script, invitations, velvet ropes, fell at my feet. I began to follow writers. At a publisher's party at the old Gramercy Park Hotel, 9 or 10 major American poets jammed together and even stood on the bed talking, oblivious, sprinkling ash. A bellman kept bringing bottles of Johnny Walker on a silver tray. Rennes, France, 8 o'clock in the morning. The light is lemony and pale. A waiter appears with a green bottle, 2 flutes, and a white napkin. The cork pops, he fills our glasses. My new husband's eyelids are delicately veined with purple lines. His body is as narrow as a girl's. We haven't slept. We're driving around the countryside in a plastic car. The car is a toy. Our life is a game. France is delighted to meet us. The champagne runs down our throats and into our bloodstreams, back into our heads, and leaves a taste in our mouths like the inside of a cave. First summer in California, we lived on apricots and bottles of the local Fumé Blanc, which left sticky prints on the thick-stemmed, blue-rimmed glasses we'd bought on a trip to Ensenada. Smells of ripe stone fruit and burning sage from the brush fires in Temecula. That was the summer of my first earthquake of 5.1. We steadied our nerves with shots of tequila, which tasted so delicious, drunk neat on the cliffs above La Bufadora. There's no time in 7 minutes to describe the southern comfort in Oslo, the herring and the Riesenbrunsgrot, our friend the Viking who rowed us across the Sonnenfjord in a dory. or the ceremonial drama of absinthe, a gray glass, strainer, sugar, water, a taste of ether in the mouth and nose, waiting for the high and the low to come on and the truth of the world to reveal itself. Our bloodshot eyes burned. We expected anything, a revolution, an apocalypse. Or the time in Cambridge, Massachusetts, 9 below zero, a man asked for money in front of a shuttered ice cream store. Too wrapped up, literally, to give him $1, I followed my jolly group to a bar for last call and drank a couple of shots of single malt scotch, which rose inside like a small, exclusive sun illuminating the figure of the frozen man outdoors. This is how single malt scotch tastes. It tastes like saying, fuck you, to the unlucky, the freezing, the lost, the homeless. The promise of the cocktail is sometimes inevitably broken. Some people count sheep to fall asleep. I count mortifications, excesses of honesty, of emotion, words spoken in heat. Once my mother drank a glass of vodka with her engagement ring in it. She's old now. It happened suddenly in San Francisco, her despair, her hip sharp in its socket. I can't go on, she said, like a Beckett character. I found 2 wicker chairs on a sidewalk. A waiter poured muscadet. Maybe it was the salty mineral residue that came off the granite that reminded her of her home terroir on a rock in Maine. She told me again the long, sad story of my father's death, the end of her romance with life. Refreshed by spirits, she regained her joie de vivre, her force of will. We made it up the hill.